What is this even?
Oh no, I really don't want to be in this game. Please get me out of here. Come on, turn on the other one.
I'm trying. Now please work again.
So having witnessed that, you may rightly assume that this is a game I'm pretty attached to, and one that I still love to play.
That's why it's still worth doing this.
But even if I wasn't that into it anymore, I would probably still have it around. For I don't understand video games as something that you just throw away after consumption. Well, there might be exceptions, but usually when a game resonates with me, I rather go...
Oh my, I better keep this around so I can replay it sometime.
And maybe then, after a while sitting on one of those games that once stunned me on first play, I might notice that it somehow seems to have lost its appeal. And even if so, I usually hesitate to throw it out. It may seem tempting to consider such a game in question as not having aged well, but sometimes I think the whole notion of video games aging isn't even accurate. If you suddenly perceive a game as dull and shallow, well, does that mean it has somehow become inferior over time? Or maybe does it just reveal that the game had never been that great in the first place? Maybe it brought a few fresh ideas or technological leaps, which might have made the game seem unique and incredibly appealing at the time, but probably only for their novelty, not because they contributed anything key. And if bit by bit a mediocre game starts showing underneath the fading novelty, then usually that gets called aging, even though it isn't really. Good game design doesn't age or break after a certain expiration date. If it works, then it just works well and keeps working. Sure, you may get tired of a game for a while, when you've just had too much.
Oh no! I think I've had too much!
Like with anything, but even then, the appeal of a good game just persists.
That's why it's still worth doing this.
So much even that inconvenient and annoying bits that indeed have likely been fixed and surpassed since just don't matter.
Why have I just took a...
Well, at least they don't matter that much.
To you, maybe.
Well, yes, nostalgia is a part of this, but only that, a part. I suppose even without these memories, I would still find Mega Man 2 genuinely fun. And with them, it happens to be my favorite game in the franchise. Must have been a year or two after my first contact when finally I got to play the crap out of it. Cause around that time it wouldn't be so uncommon anymore to have multiple TV sets at home, and we would all start borrowing each other's consoles without too much of a hassle. So I still didn't own an NES, but I would have one at home from time to time, and luckily also with Mega Man 3. I really was quite into everything Mega Man back the... What was that? Let me see that again for a second. How did that get in here? I don't even know who that is, but it's rain-bootish, crotch-tastically, winter-glovingly, paper-gluingly horrifying indeed.
Indeed, and besides, what exactly is this episode gonna be about again?
Right, so looking back now on all this playtime with different Mega Man games, maybe I can dissect a little why I find them so likable and playable.
No, not that one.
This will mostly be about the second and third NES game. And also I will try pulling this one off without making up too many crap-ass reasons why Mega Man games are the best thing that happened to anyone anywhere ever. For it's always flawed when people start reverse engineering why exactly they were so drawn to something. Usually the truth is mostly... But I wanna try this anyway. Now, obvious things first, most Mega Man titles share the same and awesome gameplay. There, I said it. And yeah, I'm a little tired of it too.
Oh no! I think I've had too much!
But that's after over 2 decades of nearly identical mechanics and building blocks. And what might those be? Well, the first one I can think of sounds kinda trivial, but it's really not. In Mega Man games, movement and shooting, which is basically all you ever do, has usually been fun. It's all tweaked so well, your running speed, your jumping control, your controls in general, and then the satisfying feedback when hitting stuff. And on top of that, there's the whole concept of being rewarded not with points, but with a useful permanent fixture on you. An interesting exception here is the first ever Mega Man title. Today it seems more like an insecure prototype which tried to explore what it wanted to be about. For it's still the only game in the original series that did have points and a score. But this probably wasn't the reward you would care most about in this game. Instead, the series would move on to be all about earning weapons and transport items to experiment with and learn how they could benefit you best. And since stages and boss fights in Mega Man games are usually pretty challenging, you get a feeling of accomplishment from that. You rightly feel like you earned all that crap on you. And other long-running franchises like Metroid or Zelda show that becoming more capable and growing with acquired items is indeed an ingenious idea to drive a game. Although, interestingly, in those games the kind of challenge involved differs quite significantly. Over there it's a mixture of exploration and puzzle solving and dexterity, with a lot of forgiveness on the dexterity side. While in Mega Man it's full emphasis on perfect play control, even a slight mistake can often instantly kill you. The stakes for simply pressing the wrong button at the wrong time are often pretty high. And being capable to precisely execute your actions usually remains your biggest resource from start to finish. Cause even though you're obtaining all these weapons, you rarely feel like you're becoming a walking tank of destruction. Quite the opposite, you always remain vulnerable, even your little sprite looks kinda harmless and fragile all the time. The Mega Man X games made you look more determined and capable, but on the other hand they even went an intimidating step further when they made your energy bar start out half as long as the bosses. But even in the old games with all bars being the same size, you often don't feel too prepared for bosses, especially when you've not yet understood their movement patterns. And sometimes you feel inadequate even if you bring the right weapon. But that's only if you let the games get in your head. It might look like they just want to get off on your tears, but for the most part they are still about fair challenge. In Mega Man 9 there's even an achievement to beat the whole game without getting hit once. Yeah, that's possible. It's this kind of careful crafting that went into these games. This all plays into the accomplishment you feel when you finally made it. And that's a huge part of what makes Mega Man fun. It's about challenge, learning and mastery, not about putting achievements on mundane tasks. Yeah, sure, it may feel routine by now, but remember how absorbing it was when you were about to beat a stage for the first time? Or if you didn't play these games, just imagine. Imagine you have once again reached that door, you are pumped, you are invested, you want to bring this to a good end. But now there's still this upcoming boss that you don't quite get yet. What will he do this time? How will he behave? Maybe he looks kinda scary and invincible.
It was then that the crowd saw the quick man.
Interesting how Mega Man games elevate such a simple matter like a boss encounter to something where there's potentially a lot going on here. That is exclusively inside the player's head, you can't see any of this on the screen.
Would this be the day that he falls?
And there you also have an example where you can't get most video games by just looking at them. But let's move on to everything you can see. Well, you've already seen a lot and I don't think I need to spend too much time on this, so just a few things I want to draw your attention to. For once that, while these games are deeply serious about their challenging, sometimes even unforgiving gameplay, they are on the other hand presented so playfully, even consciously silly at times. Or would you describe these robots as efficiently constructed killing machines to conquer the world, of course? Usually these enemies looked funny, sometimes even hilarious, and always in a smart and charming way. In fact, the whole visual presentation had this kind of personality. It was funny, colorful, detailed, and the games did accomplish pretty impressive looking things within the limitations of their platforms, as well as impressive sounding things. So finally, there's the audio, and it seems to me this one can't be emphasized enough. You just can't talk about Mega Man without talking music and sound effects. They just do contribute so very, very much. And that's no happy accident. The whole series was created with music in mind, hence the original title Rockman, which just got changed for the international release. This is also why I think of these games as prime examples for how every video game should be made, which is with the audio not tagged on but as an integral part of the game. The funny thing is, until I made contact with the NES, I didn't think that video games could have music in them while being played. Yeah, let that sink in. I had only known these Commodore 16 games I briefly mentioned in the first video, and none of them had music during gameplay, only sound effects. It's funny that this one was actually titled Return of Rockman. And I remember how the music surprised me when I first played Ice Climber, even with just this subtle stage tune. So from there on, I thought of Nintendo games primarily as the video games that had music in them.
Go away!
Although to be fair, one or two compositions were quite good even here. Did I just say that out loud? So to wrap this up, all of this combined is a pretty solid base to build a whole video game series on.
So what's with the Mega Man 2 fetish then?
Well, as I stated, I'm biased due to my history with that game. But anyway, it was, as I remember us describing it back then, the game was kinda thick.
Thick.
Yeah, thick.
What's that?
Well, it was how the game felt.
You mean like dense or consistent?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And also complete, just thick, you know.
I don't.
Well, you switch it on and it already starts you off with this elegant introduction, and then you get to play these brilliantly designed and varied stages, which all contain their own bite-sized, challenging parts. They are all built with a clear focus and don't drag on until it gets tedious. Some are platform heavy and some throw a bunch of bigger enemies at you, and all of them have a distinctive playstyle that makes them fun. And the game's got some pretty useful weapons like the leaf shield or the metal blade, which is incredibly fun to use.
Or just overpowered, as they say.
Nah, I wouldn't.
Well, it shoots in 8 directions and burns very little energy. It hits above and below your usual shooting range. You can have up to 3 blades on the screen and is strong against 4 bosses.
Yeah, that's true, but isn't that exactly what you should get when you want to establish and distinguish one weapon as your Swiss Army knife? And actually, it's not that all-powerful.
Yeah? How?
Well, sometimes you would want to move while shooting, and some stronger enemies are just immune, or you don't get any benefit from using it on them. Like on the crab bots, it's kind of crap. See, they become angry and they throw their shells away, like they would otherwise only do on the higher difficulty setting. Another nice touch, by the way, Mega Man 2 was the only original Mega Man that did have a difficulty setting. But above all, this game did have audio that was just amazing, just thick.
Ah, there it is again.
Some of these tunes, like first and foremost the Wily Stage 1 and 2 theme, are just beautiful. And also the game's music covered such a broad spectrum. Either it was pumping, often with these hard and clear beats, or it did these melodic tunes. Sometimes bursting with energy. Or striving for epic. As well as happy, funny, silly. And then meditating and soothing again. To even contemplative and melancholic.
Meh, there were pretty awesome tunes in the other games too.
Yeah, I know, and some of them I loved too. It just felt like everything that was in the second game was beautiful, I guess.
Yeah, you remember how I laughed falling to my death after taking a break?
Oh, alright, maybe everything but that.
I also love unfair enemy respawnings.
Oh, come on, those are issues with a lot of Mega Man games.
Fair enough, I love it when I can't stop my time stopper.
Well, yes, that would be Mega Man 2 specific, you little...
No need to get bitchy, I was just making a point here.
Well, of course you can find flaws like this and decide if they are serious enough issues or just nitpicking.
Oh, I love it when...
You know what, let me take a different approach here. Let's make this less about why I love this one game so unconditionally and more about certain directions the series took from there that I just took issue with.
So say, why not the third one then?
Well, it is true that on paper, Mega Man 3 already looks like a better game. There's more stages and sliding, you climb ladders faster, lots of little tweaks like this. But the buzzword is once again consistency.
You mean it's not so thick?
Yeah, it gets kind of flimsy in parts from here.
Yeah, sure, should have known.
Well, right after booting it up for the first time, I instantly noticed a different feel. There was still this awesome title song greeting you, but it climaxed into nothing, no intro. Which was disappointing after the second game had done it so memorably.
Not so thick, I get it.
And then I noticed the different sound effects, especially when hitting stuff, getting hit, or when dying. While I do realize that this is also a personal preference and that those sounds are still great, just different, it doesn't help consistency if a sequel changes sounds that are most essential to the game feel. And at the time I didn't even know that the second title sounded pretty similar to the first one. Had I played both before, then the third game would have surely felt even more strange. Well, at least the following 3 NES titles stayed close to this new soundscape introduced by Mega Man 3. But then there were some things about the third one that just felt graceless, like those graphical glitches that welcomed you in the boss select screen right after the missing intro, or on the sub menu, or during the battle with Wily.
Well, that's pretty presentation-wise now. You got something else that's a little deeper?
I do. After the second game, there would be only one weapon that was really effective against the boss, while Mega Man 2 still had a lot of flexibility in the sequence. For weapons like the Metal Blade or the air shooters would be useful against multiple bosses. And the weapons would also be useful along the way. Well, yes, only some of them, mostly the Leaf Shield or, yeah, the Metal Blade. But I like that the game establishes a clear distinction between your go-to weapons and those for special occasions only. I don't want every weapon to be a versatile tool. Although I do admit that it would be kinda nice if there were more incentives to say use the Time Stopper or the Heat Shot or the Bubblelet. And by the way, that's why I even like the structure in the first Game Boy Mega Man very much. Because after only 4 bosses, there's already a Wily stage in which every single thing you bring is useful. This cleverly designed stage constantly encourages you to use everything you have all the time. And now compare that to Mega Man 3. The issue I have here is that the game gives you little reason to use the weapons aside from boss fights, mainly cause half of them are too generic and similar. There is the Spark Shot, which is kinda like your default arm cannon, the Needle Cannon, which is kinda like your default arm cannon with turbo fire, the Hard Knuckle, which is kinda like your default arm cannon with slight steering, the Magnet Missile, which is kinda like your default arm cannon with unreliable homing, and the Gemini Laser, which is kinda like your default arm cannon that turns everything into a slowing down mess and renders you helpless while it bounces off walls and refuses to disappear. This one I'm not touching outside a boss chamber ever, not because I don't have any use for it, but because I'm afraid it might kill me.
Like the Time Stopper.
Would you please let me finish this up? There are still 3 weapons remaining, and actually my memories fooled me on them. Before I recently played the game again, I was ready to say something like,
Well, the Search Snake is essentially just a bubblelet that climbs walls. Why would I want this? It's useless.
But in Mega Man 3 there's a lot of places where enemies come down stairs or sit on a ledge, and it's kinda nice to just stand there and shoot, instead of having to jump, aim and maybe evade. Even though I didn't use the weapon that much, it's certainly not useless.
Well, the Shadow Blade is essentially just a stripped-down Metal Blade substitute that doesn't do it as an all-purpose weapon.
That's basically still true, but in those situations where it was helpful, I didn't need to go berserk and shoot a lot of blades or shoot down. It's still no weapon in the go-to category, but useful. And finally, here comes my biggest surprise. Cause from what I hear, the Topspin is usually considered the most useless Mega Man weapon of all time. And I was pretty much ready to join in on this since I didn't remember liking it either. I knew there were videos out there desperately demonstrating just how well this weapon can work, but I still thought it would be too risky and non-beneficial using it. Well, now it appears to me that this could even be considered one of the more useful weapons in the game. Cause whenever there are smaller enemies that home in on you anyway, this is a pretty good choice. But it's also true that it is still a glitch fest when hitting larger enemies. Either you are taking hits or your weapon energy suddenly gets depleted, or both. Yeah, even if it isn't that random and can be controlled, it certainly isn't good design. Speaking of which, another thing is the Rush Coil becoming obsolete as soon as you get the Rush Jet. Yeah, it is kinda similar with item 3 and 1 in the second game, though at least there are places where it's more convenient to use item 3 above 1. But once you have the Jet, there is no reason to use the coil anymore, aside from conserving some Jet energy. The fact that the Rush Jet behavior was changed after this to make it more like item 2 speaks to that. So despite having more content than Mega Man 2, the third game just felt unfinished.
Well, maybe now you are doing the nitpicking.
Yeah, I'll give you that. And I will even say it's a testament to all the other qualities of the game that even with all these issues, Mega Man 3 was still great. Bosses and stages were still inspired, introducing sliding was a smart and fun thing, and again, the music was awesome. Although when I once brought a tape with this to school, I don't remember anyone sharing the appreciation. I wonder why that is.
Those little illiterate fuck.
But starting with the third one, the games just didn't get engraved into my mind anymore as a smooth and polished experience that Mega Man 2 had been. Well, an exception here would be the first X title, which felt incredibly polished again, and I played that a lot. But even among the ones I didn't play or haven't paid too much attention to, I would probably still find the challenging gameplay, the charming humor, the inspired level design, the amazing graphics, and the brilliant music, which is just a beautiful mix. That's what I've always perceived Mega Man games to be all about. And like this, I just try to dismiss most of the existing fiction that formed and spawned around it, like the horrendously stupid cartoon.
Now I've got your power!
I even tend to think the neat thing with the old Mega Man titles is not only that they are thriving despite their vague exposition and narration, but because of it. There's more pain than gain to force detailed explanations on the distinct universe that is these games and exists out of a total suspension of disbelief anyway. They shouldn't appear as if they humbly need to elaborate on why all of what's happening here is totally plausible. Guess what? It's not. So it's only smart and self-confident of a game like Mega Man 2 to give you just enough context to conclude,
Oh, so there's more evil robots to shoot and stuff. Alright, I can dig it.
and then the game just lets you take over and play until the credits roll. I adore this absence of real-world interlude, if you will. Part of the charm even arises from the challenging limitations that these games were created with and that they still turned out amazing. Sure, limits can be crippling, but they can also provide opportunities for unique and awesome solutions. Whole video game genres have been born out of this. And isn't it stunning that such a bare-boned cosmos comes together this well? Just from this imaginative design and mechanics and a world formed out of challenges and little expressive sprites and what they convey, which is so much. But I'm not so sure there's much more Mega Man like this to come. If it is, then bring it by all means. And if not, then I would rather just remember everything Mega Man like, well, this.
You make it sound kinda overly whiny and sad, you know that? But then again, what you're saying sounds kinda fine to me.
Alright, then let's do that.
Come on, come on. Yes!